you and your girlfriend, I'm assuming girlfriend, right?
Yes.
Broke up, and you felt like your identity was gone. Your confidence. What? Why do you think that was? What about that breakup caused this kind of disconnect between you and your confidence as well as your self identity?
Well, because the only thing that I wanted to do was be a comedian, and her whole thing was I didn't want to move on with life. I didn't want to buy a house. I didn't want to get a job with a 401k. I didn't want to. And then once we broke up, I actually realized, yeah, that was kind of true at the time. I didn't want to. I was fine renting. I was fine not having a car. I just wanted to be on stage. And when it all happened and then I lost the one thing that I thought was, solid, it made me feel like, well, I worked so hard at that relationship. If that didn't work and I tried so hard at that, then why would this work? And it just put me in a loop. But eventually, you surround yourself by people that actually care about you and actually want to see you do well.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Unleash Your Greatness. And I'm Adam Platt. And today I've got a guest on. His name is Justin Pinky Morris. And he's a former comedian. And he's also a podcaster himself. And so I brought him on because he has a really, good story about trying to get on as a comedian and the kind of the adversity he went through on that, as well as I'll let him tell his story, but so Justin, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here and sharing some of your story and insights about life, as well as things that you are overcoming, as well as what you've overcome. And we talked the other day, and it was just so fun to chat. And you have a great personality. Of course, the comedy is always a good plus. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to give me a chat, and not only do that, but put it out to the public. I think that's awesome. Yeah. And I did have a ton of fun talking to you at that time as well. And I wish it could have been a little longer, but got to save some content for the podcast,
Absolutely. So, you were a comedian, you were getting on stages, and then COVID hit, right?
Yes, that was the most recent one. Yeah, there was two things that stopped me from doing comedy at a point in my life, and that's the most recent one. And that one hurt the most because I felt like I was actually getting it down. Like I felt like I was brand new back in the first time, but now like I was done being a hack comedian and actually doing stuff. It hurt. It really hurt.
So that was the second time. What was the first time?
So the first,
back to that one.
Yeah, the first time I was really into comedy. I'm 27 now. So this was when I was about 20 years old. I was living in California on my own, away from my parents finally. And I just wanted to give it a go. And I finally did. And I felt like I had fun doing it. I was really new, so I wasn't super great, but I knew it, and it made me try harder, and it made me try harder. But the biggest issue was the person I was with wasn't very supportive about it. So they wouldn't come to any of my shows. And then for some reason, it almost felt like a sort of jealousy. We would get in fights and arguments because I was going to do these things, even though she was invited every time. And then when we finally broke up, it made me feel so small. I couldn't get back on stage it had to have been like 3 years or so. I just didn't feel good at it. I didn't feel good about anything. And then getting back on stage was a really huge step for me because that's all I wanted to do. I was super, super depressed, and it was because I wasn't putting myself out there. That was my happy place. If there was a psychiatrist or a hypnotist and they said, close your eyes and go to your happy place, it would be on stage telling a joke about farts,
That's awesome. I have twin daughters that are 7, and they would think that is hilarious. But And I probably would too, actually. My wife, not so much, but uh, so you and your girlfriend, I'm assuming girlfriend, right?
Yes.
Broke up, and you felt like your identity was gone. Your confidence. What? Why do you think that was? What about that breakup caused this kind of disconnect between you and your confidence as well as your self identity?
Well, because the only thing that I wanted to do was be a comedian, and her whole thing was I didn't want to move on with life. I didn't want to buy a house. I didn't want to get a job with a 401k. I didn't want to. And then once we broke up, I actually realized, yeah, that was kind of true at the time. I didn't want to. I was fine renting. I was fine not having a car. I just wanted to be on stage. And when it all happened and then I lost the one thing that I thought was, solid, it made me feel like, well, worked so hard at that relationship. If that didn't work and I tried so hard at that, then why would this work? And it just put me in a loop. But eventually, you surround yourself by people that actually care about you and actually want to see you do well. And it took about 3 years, like I said, and I developed a huge drinking problem at the time. And yeah, but I mean, there was the 3 years in between that where I did nothing but play video games and drink. And I did experiment with some drugs that I would have never touched these days. And but there was kind of a bright side, I guess, because I spent all that time playing video games. I got a sponsorship playing, and I played semi-professionally
Oh,
for a while. And I guess that might have stopped me from getting on stage again. But then that faded away, and then the depression hit again.
oh wow.
Yeah, I ended up not getting re-signed for the team the next year, and I thought, oh, okay, is it because I'm drinking so much, blah blah blah. But then that just made me drink heavier, um, and but eventually, I was working a dead end job at Dairy Queen at the time, and I ended up meeting who is now my fiance, who I do the podcast with now, and she I told her I used to do comedy, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, you're really funny. You should get back on stage. And I did. And it was a crazy killer set in a bar with like 12 people. But everybody was laughing. And I got the bug again. And I immediately went back to her and I was like, you are going to be mine forever. This has to happen. Like I would have never done this. And I wasn't getting paid to do the set. So it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the success. It was just about being able to bring people into a room and make them forget about how their kid got suspended or their light bill might be due. Just that little bit of happiness that I can bring to even that small crowd made me feel bigger than myself. Like I had a reason to live, like I had a reason to not just make myself happier, but maybe others in the process.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So, God, there's so much there I want to unpackage.
Oh yeah, go for it. Yeah, definitely, man.
Because going from a relationship, your girlfriend that broke up with you, and having that identity so a part of, or that relationship so a part of your identity, and her not being supportive of you being a comedian, and then you go down the spiral, I guess, path of drinking, drugs, depression, and then you meet this new woman who just totally goes and like cheers you on to go after your dreams and your passion, and you get back on stage. Like it's so, like you said, it's so important to be surrounded by those people who cheer you on and support you, and sadly enough, not everybody has that, right?
Oh yeah, I spent a lot of time with people that didn't. That was the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a huge problem. And I think that a lot of time, going back to your ex-girlfriend, a lot of people do wrap their identity around a relationship. And when those relationships do end, not that they always do, but when they, at times like you had, when they do end, like that identity just is stripped away from you, and you put so much effort and time, and not that that's a bad thing. We all need to put time and effort into our relationships, but when we wrap our whole identity around a relationship and then it goes away, it's so hard to bounce out of that. And you're proof of that, right? Like it took you 3 years to come out of it, and finding someone who kind of pushed you out of it almost.
Oh yeah, and that was the best thing she could have ever done for me. But the whole thing was, I was just so young. I felt like it was my whole life, but really it was just my whole young adult life, which was just, 3 years at the time. I didn't get to realize everything else that was yet to be experienced as an adult. I just got away from my parents and I thought that was it. This is what life is. But really, when you're with something or someone that's so toxic to yourself,
Yeah.
as soon as you get rid of it, that's when you get to really learn what young adulthood is and could be. Is as soon as you pull your head out of your own butt at one point,
Right.
you can actually see the world and you don't smell so much poop,
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. I like that. That's a good way to put it. Uh, and yeah, such a well, for one thing, you're still young compared to me. I'm in my 40s, so you being only 27, you're like a pup compared to me. But yeah, that's definitely a good perspective to have. That we all have those young years where we're one immature or dumb in a lot of aspects, and we grow up and we learn, and we hopefully we move on past all those dumb mistakes and we don't make them again. Not that we don't always make new mistakes, but hopefully we don't make the same mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And you know it's just I'm so glad that you were able to find someone who pulled you out of that. Because where do you think you would be if you hadn't met this your fiance? Do you think you'd still be going down that path, or possibly maybe kind of been able to pull yourself out eventually? Or
Um, I mean, I would definitely be not as clean, which isn't saying a lot since I'm not super clean, but I would not be as clean in terms of, I don't mean just in terms of cleanliness. I mean, in terms of organization, in terms of how well I treat not just myself, but people around me. Waking up and having somebody that is excited, because we have the same job too. So we're excited to go to work together every day. And we've been together for so long at this point that we should be arguing, but when we do, it's literally because we can't figure out where to eat. Like it's nothing crazy. We're not getting down each other's. It's the most progressive thing. And when she got me into my comedy, I got her back into her painting. She's a brilliant artist, and because I wanted to pay her back. That's the thing. That's how they're doing something good for you,
yeah,
where they're paying you in something that is a currency that isn't physical money, and you literally feel like you have to pay them back every chance you get. And it's literally the most beautiful. I've never been happier than these past, which is weird during COVID, but these past 2 years have been the happiest times I've ever had, and I wouldn't give them up for anything. But to really answer your question, I would be back in South Dakota living at my parents' house because I wouldn't be able to stop drinking. Really, drinking would have been my downfall.
yeah,
And it's not that I'm sober now, but I limit myself. I'm at 7 beers a week now, and that was all because I told her I think I drink too much, and she was like, okay, then we're gonna do something about it. I was like, thank you, because if it was just me thinking that, I would have thought that until I walked by the corner store, you know.
yeah. And that is something. There's a couple things that I really caught on to. Is one, the fact that you are so grateful for what she did to help you, that you wanted to pay her back, and that really is like true support of each other, right? Which is beautiful. And then number two, the fact that you realize that accountability, having somebody that you need to answer to, know, because you said if it was just me, I probably would have said, I'm going to stop. And then the next time you walk by a corner grocery store, you would have stopped in and got some
Yep.
alcohol. And so having that accountability to somebody who's going to hold you, true to your word, that's power that you understand that, because I think lots of times people miss that point of really going to the next level in their life, is to have somebody who will, one, cheer them on, and two, hold them accountable for the things they say they're going to do. Now, that's not to say that we can't hold ourselves accountable at some level, but it's a lot harder to do that. And it takes a lot more self-discipline to do that. Lots of times when you're dealing with something like, drugs, alcohol, or just bad habits in general, it's a lot harder to hold yourself accountable if you have to answer to somebody else, say, yeah, I did that, or no, I'm doing good today. I'm staying on the path. It's so much more easy to do that than by
Yeah,
yourself.
with something like addiction, it's almost, I would say, impossible to do it without somebody holding you accountable. Like, for example, if you were sitting on your couch and you just ordered a pizza by yourself and you're like, I'm going to eat this whole thing just because, you would probably give up halfway through because you're full, But if you're sitting there with your buddy and you're like, I'm going to eat this whole pizza, he's going to go, you won't. No, you won't. And he's just trying to egg you on, push you further. And you're probably going to, you might be sick, but you're going to push yourself. You need that accountability
Right.
yeah, you need that little shove.
Yeah. Yeah, true. I love that, because you just want to prove that you can do it to somebody else. Yeah.
Exactly.
Good point. Um, yeah. And I that's so true with addictions. I mean, that's why there's so many support groups out there for addictions, right? You got AA, Anonymous, and all kinds of other support groups for eating disorders and drugs and alcohol and whatever. I mean, there's tons, right?
Yeah.
But that's why we have those groups out there, is because it is accountability. It is having to go to people and say, hey, I am been sober for the last hour or whatever, right? And you have to answer that. And then lots of times in those groups, I would assume, I don't know a lot about them, but that they, you get accountability partners. I've seen on shows where you get like the coins and things like that, and you have to answer to an accountability partner, because that is so powerful to, like you say, to have somebody that's, you're saying, hey, I'm going to do this, and then they're like, no, you're not. Or hopefully they're cheering you on, not telling you can't do it, but in this case, hopefully they're saying, yeah, you can do it, go for it, eat that pizza, or stop drinking, or whatever, because having that cheerleader in your life is super powerful. We all want to have somebody that's in our court and helping us out.
So you brought up those little coins that you get in AA, right?
Uh-huh.
So I thought of a way to make it a lot more successful, and it's directly involved with those coins.
Okay.
If AA every, let's say you get one every month, right? If every time they were like, let's say like little bonds, there were bonds for a bank, and you got a little 5-cent one for your first month, and then it doubles every time. 10, I mean, sure, it would take some funding, but that money incentive might make people, sober for 2 years, and now that bond's worth $300 or something.
Yeah.
And then if you do want to relapse, now you have some money, right?
Which I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but
I was just trying to throw in a bad joke. No
no,
worries.
that's funny. Well, and that's the thing is it really comes down to what people's motivation is, right? If they really want to quit, they're gonna hopefully find somebody that's gonna help them, and then they're gonna take action to quit, or even as a coach myself, I teach people to start doing something to replace, something positive to replace the negative. So start a new habit, exercise, or uh, read or meditate, or whatever. There's so many different things, and everybody's different on what they're different.
Yeah, like in order to quit smoking, I replaced it because I like that feeling in the mouth. So it was lollipops and toothpicks to clean the teeth and to sugar rush, I guess.
Yeah. And a lot of times those types of things, those types of habits, smoking, drinking, those types of things are usually a social thing too, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
you go out for a smoke break, you talk to the other smokers. It's a social thing. You want to drink, you go to the bar, you have a drink with some friends. It's, again, social. So you kind of have to almost separate yourself from those social circles at that point, and break away from that. And again, like you were talking earlier, and I love the point that you brought up, that the people we surround ourselves with is a huge impact on our life. So like for you, your fiance was a huge impact, but the people we hang out with, the people we surround ourselves with, can have a huge effect on uh, who we are, what we become, and how successful we can be in life. So, there's the old adage that, or not old, but people always say you're basically the combination of the most five people that you hang out with, right, or something to that effect. So, and I believe that's true. If you are going to hang out with a bunch of gangsters, drug dealers, or whatever, guess what? You're probably going to be. You're going to be one of them. But if you hang out with people who are successful, know how to make money, know how to, good habits, those things are going to rub off on you. And so it's important to surround yourself with those types of people for sure.
That's a good point, because because I went to school in California, in kind of a sketchy area, and there was a bunch of gangsters, I guess. Yeah. And you're right, not a single one of them was like, "Hey guys, I'll catch you later. Got to go to my piano lesson."
Right. Yeah.
Never once.
Yeah, you're probably like, "Hey, let's go
see steal a piano."
Yeah, go beat somebody up, or steal a piano, or go get a new Glock or whatever, right? Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I love the humor, but it's so true, right? Like, you would never hear that from a group of gangsters. Number one, the other five would probably beat the dude up because he was taking piano, and number two, I can't really see many gangsters being involved in piano lessons, but that's not to say it can't happen. But
I mean, Kanye West did. Oh, well, I guess he's not really a gangster, but
he's kind of a wannabe, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know his background at all, to be honest. But I've seen him play the piano, though.
Yeah. I don't really know his background either. I don't know where he came from. I don't know a whole lot about him. I don't follow him too much. I just hear the snippets here and there. But
I would love it if you were actually the biggest Kanye fan ever, and then you just took over the podcast and started talking about that the whole time. I would love that.
Oh man, it's funny. Me and my wife were in, where were we at? California. It had to have been California, and we were out there for a little event, and we were staying in a hotel. It was a fairly nice hotel, and we had gone out to wait for an Uber to take us to dinner or something like that. And there's this guy sitting there, and he's kind of looking at his watch, and he looks kind of pissed off, and I can't remember what I said. I said something to him like, "Everything okay?" or whatever. He's like, "Oh, they took my car away, and they weren't supposed to take it. The valet took it and parked it. They were supposed to leave it right here. This is like right in front of the hotel, in the lobby area, right in front of the lobby. Yeah, they're supposed to leave it right here for me so I could go to dinner, and they took it. And so now I have to wait." And he's all kind of pissed off. And I'm like, "Oh, where are you from?" And he kind of had the gangster type look to him, or rapper type look. I'm like, and he's like, "Oh, I'm from Atlantic City." I'm like, "Oh, okay. What are you doing out here?" He's like, "Oh, he kind of chuckles. He's like, "Oh, I'm actually here to meet Crazy Kanye." And so wow. He was actually there to do some work with him to help him, produce some new music and stuff. But yeah, he called him Crazy Kanye, and it was really funny. He's like, "Yeah, he's a pretty interesting dude. He's a little crazy, but he pulls people all the time over to help him, make new music and bounce stuff off and stuff." So,
hey man, yeah. I mean, that's at first I was like, this guy's mad because he has to wait for his valet. He seems a little, and then he works with Kanye. Okay, that.
Well, in Atlantic City, he's probably, I don't know exactly what his background was, but I think he was a fairly successful music producer or something, sound something or other that works with high end, clients and stuff. So, anyways, it was kind of funny. But since you brought up Kanye, that's my Kanye.
Man, that's cool. I don't think I could play, that 6 Degrees to Kevin Bacon. I don't think I've ever met anybody that would get me 6 Degrees to Kanye, to be honest.
Yeah, that's probably the closest I ever got to Kanye, and probably ever will. So, anyways, that's kind of off topic, but
that shows that it's more genuine, that we're having a real conversation.
Yeah, it was fun. It was kind of fun. We chatted for a minute with him, and then our Uber came and we left. But it was kind of fun. So I really want to kind of. You said that was the first time
Yep.
right? So the kind of first uh, slap in the face, if you will,
Yeah.
and now COVID hits, and now you're not doing comedy anymore because of all the comedies, places are shut down and it's tough, and you're in California still, right?
No, actually, I just moved to Washington
Okay,
maybe
Washington, that's right.
about a year before COVID hit,
Gotcha.
maybe 2 years. But yeah, so I moved out to Washington so after the breakup in California, I moved back in with my parents in South Dakota. I don't like it there very much. Not that the people are bad or that it's just there's nothing to do, nowhere to perform, and it, it's so cold. It's literally
Yeah.
-0 most of the year,
Yeah.
uh,
Yep.
or below zero most of the year, and so I had to get back out. I ended up I wanted to go back to California, but it was so expensive. It was really hard to do by myself. So I ended up coming to Washington because it's kind of a cheaper version. And especially for how close I could be to Seattle. I'm only about 30 minutes away from Seattle if there's no, so traffic. There we go.
Yeah.
I almost said taxes. But yeah, it was only 30 minutes out. I wasn't getting a ton of shows out in the Seattle area, but it was an option. And there was actually a lot of places here in my local area I was able to do like a lot of biker bars. I did go back to California to do a wedding. Wedding venues are really weird for comedy, but that one was fun. And but yeah, I was getting some footing, and but as soon as I started meeting like local comedian friends and starting to actually develop like friendships with them, I was gonna do a Instagram sketch show with one of them.
Uh-huh.
Um, then everything shut. I remember I had 2 shows lined up the week after. I was gonna go to the Tacoma Comedy Club, and Joe Coy was gonna be there too. It wasn't like we were on the same bill or anything. It was like an open mic night, and then Joe Coy's gonna go up at the end. And I was like, yes, I can technically say I did a show with Joe Coy. And so I was going to go do that, and then boom, everything gets shut down in Washington, like super heavy, and also my job gets shut down. I have to go on unemployment, and I honestly wasn't like upset as I could have been because I was with my fiance. It was locked down with her, and we actually finished Netflix, and and I got to play a lot of video games. But eventually, it just started to wear on me that I wasn't working my creative muscle anymore, you know.
Yeah.
And so I ended up working on a car with one of her roommates. He had an old busted down Mustang. We completely redid it. And then, but after that, I was bored again. And that's when me and Zolma started the Before Bed podcast. And honestly, I was telling you this like before when you're like, oh, what should I introduce you as? I was like, I haven't done comedy in so long, maybe former comedian, because I'm having so much fun doing these podcasts with Zolma sometimes we do 2 3 a week. They're so fun. We just goofing around, being silly, just like having the time of our life. Like I wouldn't mind if I ended up a famous podcaster as opposed to a famous comedian, really, at this
Oh,
point.
cool.
And so that's kind of where I'm at now. And really, I think the whole point of my story is if you can find someone if you can find someone that cares for you and loves you, you're going to love yourself just as much, and then you're going to love them even more. And I think really the meaning of life is love, really.
Yeah.
And I know it's cheesy, but it doesn't have to be as a relationship. It can be, your brother, your roommate, just somebody you can really confide in and be yourself around and just have some fun, because life doesn't have to be as serious all the time. There's definitely serious moments. Like I buckled down and just started college, and but that's something I would have never done if there wasn't people around me loving me. And it's not just my fiance. I have friends that I truly, truly care about, and I hope they feel the same about me. I'm not as sure about them as I am with my fiance, but yeah, really, I think just the meaning of life is just to have fun with someone, not just yourself. I think even introverts can get along with that, because even introverts are going to go on, into chat rooms or something. And everybody's going to crave some sort of love from another individual. And I say chase it. Really, I think it helps.
Yeah, for sure. That's a beautiful message, and I totally agree with is love is so important. Connection with other people, and just having that love in your life, whether it's just one person, a significant other, or a group of friends, or just I even think I would say go so far as to say you need to love yourself as well.
Oh
So
yeah.
and make sure that you have that connection not only with those around you, but and actually I think it starts with yourself. Once you love yourself, you can love other people and have greater, deeper connections with them. So,
Yeah, and I think any stand-up comic will tell you this, that we're all narcissistic. We all love ourselves. We all love ourselves so much, and that's why we get on stage. We say, "Look at me. You should love me the way I do." Like listen to my funny jokes,
right.
and uh, but at that point, like I feel like when I'm on stage doing that, I'm spreading. Laughter causes love, and then you get to once I get off stage and the show is over, then they get to look to their friends and have more good times with whomever they're with, because I just put that in the atmosphere. And I think spreading the love is really my favorite thing ever. And now I think with a podcast, if it gets bigger, then I'm going to have more viewers than I'll ever have people sat in a room. That's why I want to focus on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And definitely you can always, I mean, unless you're like one of those comedians that's going to be on TV in front of, millions of people, but you can reach so many people through your podcast without it being like this huge ordeal, right? Like, I mean, I think a lot of people, and my podcast is brand new, but I think a lot of people are intimidated to start a podcast because one, they don't know how to do it. Two, they're scared of what other people might say as they start putting themselves out there and talking or being on shows or just like we are having a conversation with other people. And I think you have to kind of get past that because you as a comedian, you probably had moments where you had to get past that, right? I would think so.
Oh, 100%. I used to have a joke that was, I guess, a little off-colored, but it would always upset at least one person. And so I had the second part to it that would make them kind of stop doing that, which made it easier to go on stage. The second part was, hey, I don't mean to accidentally offend anybody. I never want to do that. So please, if I do, come up to me after the show so I can do it to your face on purpose. And that would show them that, like, if you put out that little like aggression and then they won't do it back. I don't know why, but they stopped doing it at that point. But before I was doing that and I was getting these angry people, it would scare me to get back on stage and do that joke again. And there's nothing like having a bad set and then going on the next show after that set.
Mm.
It's because you're like, what if it does that again? And that scariness is, I mean, it's almost needed. It's like going on a roller coaster. You're scared, but you want to do it, and the reason you want to do it is because it's going to be better for you, at least for yourself. And I mean, maybe not the roller coaster. You'll enjoy it, so it will be better for you. So I guess that does work. But
Yeah.
yeah, just pushing forward is always, conquer your fears. That's the best. It's the same thing. You conquer your fear and you feel better afterwards every time.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I like the analogy of the roller coaster because although it can be super scary, it can be a lot of fun too.
Oh yeah, but it
So
can be detrimental as well.
that's quite true.
That's the scary part, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. That roller coaster. I remember we went to, it's been years ago, but we went to Six Flags in California one time. And there was this one roller coaster. We went on all kinds of roller coasters and and most of them I was like, oh, that was fun and stuff. But there was this one. It was like one of those ones that you're sitting in a chair that's kind of hanging.
Oh, that was the Medusa. I've been there. I love that one.
I can't remember, but what it was called. But it kind of went around and went over this other older roller coaster, this kind of wood roller coaster, kind of flies on top of this other one. It's right next to it. And all it had was a thing that came down over you. And there was no like, you know, seatbelt or anything. It was just the
Yeah, the harness, and then there's no floor, right? Your feet are literally dangling.
Right. Yeah. So your feet are just dangling, and it wasn't even a harness. It was just one of those pull bar things down that come down and lock in, right?
Yeah.
And so you're sitting there, and at first I was like, oh, this is fun. And then I just started thinking, like, if this thing fails, the mechanism that holds this thing's closed fails and it pops open, there is no way I'm holding on. I'm going to go flying, land on that other roller coaster, and it's going to run over me. Like, I don't know why that went through my head, but it so just went through my head. And I got off that, like, I'm like, that was an awful roller coaster. I hated that. And I don't know why that was. Like, I don't know. It was so weird. But yeah, so as fun as they can be, sometimes it's tough to face those fears or those things that we have to go through in our life. But it's always worth going through them, because now I have that experience. I can tell it, and yeah, I try not to relive it too much. But
I have a strange, maybe philosophical question that you might not even be able to answer right now.
Okay,
but I just thought of it, and so you being a coach,
yep.
Let's say it was you coaching yourself. What would be you telling yourself to do next? What would you be telling yourself?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. As far as like right now in my life, or
yeah, at this very moment, yeah, what would you?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And it's always hard to look at your own self and evaluate. It's easier for, like, as a coach, it's so many times I will look at someone like, this is what you got to do. You got to do this, this, and this, right? And they're like, oh yeah, you're right. Or sometimes they get a little upset, like, I don't know, but
yeah, that's why I'm saying, like, existential. If you were a different person, and it's just like, I don't know, a twin version of you, and you have no idea but you guys have the same brain process. So it's not you telling you, but it's you telling you, you know?
Yeah. So I think what I would tell myself is put yourself out there even more. Because, and I am, like, I started the podcast just a little over a week ago. I dropped my first couple episodes, but I feel like there's a lot more that I could do to put myself out there and be more vulnerable at sharing some of my story and things that I've struggled with. I have shared that, but I need to get better at sharing things like that. And I also would say, go do the things that scare you, because it's in those moments that things that scare you, when you tackle them head on, that's where true growth happens. And yeah, and that's one thing that I've really worked on. I worked on it last year, and I'm so going to focus on it more this year. Like last year, this is kind of a funny story, is my wife, myself, and my oldest daughter, who she just turned 19 this last year, but she was finally old enough to go skydiving. And so she's like, I want to go skydiving. And my wife had been once. I have never been. So like, well, we can all go. And so we all decided to go skydiving. And I'm like, oh, I'm a coach. I can do this. It's going to be amazing. And it was like, we're there. And actually it was funny because we went one time, we made an appointment to go, and we were all harnessed up, and our little monitor was saying, you're 10 minutes away from getting on the plane. And then the owner of the skydiving company came over, like, hey, we just had an employee test positive for COVID, so we have to shut everything down. And we're like minutes away from getting on the plane. And so, we get all psyched up for it. And then he's like, you'll have to reschedule and come back another time. We have to go get everybody tested and all this stuff. And so like a week later, we came back, and of course, all psyched up. And I remember being on the plane, and we're flying up, and you start looking out the window, and everything just starts getting smaller, because the plane is just climbing, right? You
Yeah.
go up to, I think we went up to 13,000 feet or something like that. And I'm looking down like, holy crap, we got to be getting ready to jump out of this plane at any minute. And all of a sudden, the guy who is jumping with my daughter, he's like, "Yeah, we're halfway there." He looks at his little thing that tells him how high he is. He's like, "Yeah, we're halfway there." And I turn back to my guy. I'm like, "Did he say we're just halfway there?" He's like, "Yep, we're halfway." Like, holy crap, this is super high. Anyway, so we I was in the very back of the very first row. So there's two rows that you kind of straddle these benches, and you just start going down the row, and people just start jumping out. And it got up to me, and the guy, he makes you hold on to the harness. Have you ever been skydiving?
Oh no. No way. No, no, no.
So at this particular place, they have you hold on to the harness. They're like, "Okay, don't let go of the harness until I tap you on the shoulder twice or three times, and then you can let go and put your arms out and stuff." But I think they have you hold on to the harness because they don't want people to grab the door last second and stop them from going out, right? So you're holding on, and he basically goes, "Okay, I'm going to go one rock, and then two, we're out the door." And man, we stepped up. You step up to the door, and your toes are hanging over the edge of the plane. You're looking down like, "Oh my gosh, what did I just sign up for?" And the minute that you jump out, because he goes one, and then boom, you're out. And you're like, "Whoa," and the air starts hitting your face and the mask, and you have like these little goggles on that feel like they're gonna fly off any second. But it's in that moment where you're like, at first you're like, "What did I get myself into?" And then you're like, "Holy crap, this is amazing." Because you're flying, like it literally, you're flying. Sure, you're falling, but it feels like you're flying, and it is just amazing. It's an amazing experience. And so, yeah, one of the things I guess I would tell myself is go do those things that scare you, because man, that's where true one awesome stories come from, and two, they're just amazing times to grow. And I would totally jump out of a plane again. It was fun. If I would say anybody who's questioned if they should do it or not, do it. Like it is so much fun. But it was amazing. So
I used to have a roommate that that would go do that like for fun, and he invited me once, and I was like, yeah, sure, because like I wanted to like because I just moved in, so I wanted to be like, yeah, I'm cool. And
mhm.
then when the day came, I just like I never brought it back up, and he took off without me, and I was like, oh, thank God. Ooh.
Oh, that is so funny. The day we went, the time we actually jumped, not the first time that they canceled, but the time we actually jumped, there was a guy there, and he was 85 years old, and he was going to jump out of the plane for the very first time. He's like, "Yeah, I just decided for my birthday I'm going to go and go skydiving. I didn't tell my kids or anybody I'm doing this. I just decided I'm going to go do it." And we're like, "Man, that is awesome." And he went up in the plane before us. Then he came down. We're like, "How was he?" Like, "Oh my gosh, it was awesome. I'm doing it again for my 90th birthday." So,
Can you imagine how nervous you would be as the guy that has to handle the 85-year-old guy?
yeah, I mean, he looked pretty good for 85, but yeah, he's like, "Yeah, I'm 85 years old." And we're like, "Holy cow, that is awesome. Good for you to put yourself out there." So it's never too late to I think experience new things, try new things, and try hard things that scare you. So
Everybody likes to make the hack joke of like the first guy to drink milk and how weird that is. I think it's weirder to be the first guy that jumped out of an airplane. Like, I think this blanket will hold me up, guys. That's
yeah,
that's crazy to me.
yeah, it was crazy amazing. So my wife and I, we plan on doing it again, and we like to travel, go to tropical areas and stuff. We're like, maybe if we go to Hawaii again, we'll go skydiving in Hawaii. That'd be awesome.
Oh, that would be cool. They also have a cool like the paragliding, like how you hold
Uh-huh.
the back of a boat or whatever.
Yeah,
Those look fun.
yeah.
Uh, but did you guys like get GoPro recording of it or anything?
We did, yeah. So we both paid. My daughter didn't pay for any of the camera stuff, but me and my wife both had a cameraman. So he had one on his hand, strapped to his hand, that he was taking pictures and stuff with, and then they had another dude that jumped out in front of us that was filming us. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's cool.
we got video of it all, and I'm kicking and screaming at first, and I look like a little schoolgirl, but it was fun. It was definitely worth the extra to get that recording, because now I can look back at it and be like, oh my gosh, that was just insane and cool. So
Man, I envy that, man. I think I'll wait until I think I'll wait till my 85th birthday too.
just as long as you do it, I don't care. No, it was fun, but I would definitely tell myself to make sure to put yourself out there, or I would tell myself to put myself out there more and go do those things that scare you, because that really was it was an experience and something I can always talk about. And yeah, I think that that's really when you put yourself in those situations that you feel like, man, this is super uncomfortable. That's where growth really happens. So
Yeah, yeah,
thanks for asking that question. That was a great question. I
yeah,
should be
man.
asking you questions like that.
Hey, I got into host podcast mode for a second. I thought of it and I was like, I can't just hold on to this one,
Yeah,
you know.
no, that's awesome. Um, what about you? What would you tell yourself?
Um, I would tell myself uh to stop giving up on things.
Mm,
Because I always that was one of the reasons why I did college, because I was like, if I'm putting the money in, I'm actually going to see something through. Because there's been so many times where, like when I got uh, kicked out of my semi-pro game team, I tried to start my own, and then we did like a couple practice matches, and we weren't as good as I thought. But instead of practicing, I just broke up the team, and like it seems like I do that too much, where I'll start something up, a project, and then just forget it. And I need to commit. I think that's the biggest thing, commit. If I want to do it, I'm gonna do it. My thought was I need to skydive, I'm gonna do it. That's my thing. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to be a feature act for stand-up comedy by the end of the year. Me and my fiance are planning on moving to Florida because everything's still opened up out there.
yep.
And there's a lot of comedy clubs that need new comics because there's a lot of comics that won't go do it because of the COVID, and
Wow.
I can take advantage of that. And I've always only been an opener. I've never even been an MC. And so, do you know the difference, like opener, features, and headliners?
I kind of a little bit, but
So the MC is the first guy that comes out. He'll tell like 2 minutes of jokes, and then he'll be like, "All right, and here's your first comic of the evening," and then they come out. That's the opener.
gotcha.
Opener makes anywhere between 25 and 75 bucks. And that's the biggest one I got. Feature will make, depending on how big the venue is, they can make 1,000 to three, or I mean, they can make 100 to like 3,000. And then the headliner can make a buku bucks. So I just want to make sure I can get to that feature and get that little pay bump and have a solid 20 minutes of comedy, because I've always had 15 great minutes and then 5 minutes of like kind of throwaway stuff I'm working on.
Mm.
And I just want to focus on that and then just commit to the podcast. I've done 2 podcasts and I gave up on those, and now this one I'm gonna commit. I'm just gonna everything I want to make myself stop feeling like a young adult and actually just be an adult. That's what I'm gonna commit to, man.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that consistency and never giving up is so critical. And I've there's been times where I've like, oh, I'm tired of this, I'm bored of it, or you just and I was gonna say earlier when you were talking a little bit about how fun it was to like work on that car, restore that Mustang and things like that, and how that really helped you, kind of get back out of your I guess slump or your rut that you were in. And really, I was reading a book a little while ago, and the guy talked about how he asked the question, "What's the difference between, or what's the opposite of happiness?" And most people would say unhappy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But really, what he says, it's boredom. And I started thinking about that. I'm like, yeah, that's really quite true. Anytime that you get unhappy, it's because you stop being excited about stuff and you get bored with what you're doing. And so, in your relationships, in your job, in your everyday, like if you just go through the routine all the time and you're just going through the motions, you're not going to be happy because you're not putting a little bit of spice and fun and excitement into your life. And that's really what I, more and more I thought about, I'm like, that's so true. Anytime that I felt down or uh, depressed or whatever, I've always felt like I was stuck. I was just going through the motions. And that's when it's the hardest, I think. And so when you can find those little things to just shift what you're doing a little bit, you can be a lot happier and excited for life.
You know what? That makes a lot of sense because if the opposite of unhappy was to be like upset or angry or, just down, that wouldn't make great reality TV.
Right.
Like me and Zolma, we love to watch just trash reality TV because we love to hate it, you know. So, but we're happy, so that totally makes sense. Uh, real life of housewives or whatever, that wouldn't exist at all if people didn't like.
No.
People love being upset at them, you know.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense.
Yep. And I think, like I say, I think it goes for anything, like your relationships. If you just go and do the same thing all the time, go to the same restaurant, eat the same food, watch the same shows all the time, and you don't change anything with your relationship, you're going to get bored with it. And that's when people get unhappy, right?
Yeah.
You don't, I don't think you have kids yet, right? So,
Nope.
but
Nope.
lots of times my wife and I, we have 5 kids, and sometimes it gets hard to think of new things to do, or to even go, on a vacation with the kids or whatever is difficult, expensive. And, so, we have to get kind of creative on the things that we do just to keep things, a variety in our marriage. And so it can be hard at times, especially as you do, get kids and get older and stuff. But if you can find just those little things and enjoy each other's company, then you're going to be a lot happier.
Yeah,
So
that's one of the reasons why we started up the podcast was
yeah,
because during COVID we needed something to do besides watching Netflix, and
right.
and having those conversations. I know it's a bad word to use because of my lack of vocabulary, but forced to have a conversation, once the mic is on and we start talking, we're forced to talk as opposed to, if we're just chilling in the room, we might pull out our phones and be like, look at this Facebook meme, and it's not nearly as entertaining as, hey, who do you think stinks more after a basketball game? Shaquille O'Neal or Yao Ming? Like that's way more interesting. Like,
Sure. Yeah, no, that's good. And mixing it up, like you said, just to give you guys a new experience to go through together. That's powerful. That's awesome.
oh
So
yeah, or it could be something as small as just redecorating the room, reorganizing it, put the bed over there, TV over there, just having those. I mean, and if you're in, that's also a good indicator of whether or not you're in a bad relationship, because if that causes an argument, then you're done for. Like
true. Yep.
like have some fun with it, and
Yep.
yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. So in closing, I just want to ask you one last question, and that is, if you were to give one thing that you feel people need to do to unlock the greatness within themselves or unleash the greatness within themselves, what would it be?
Um, for me, recently, just because this is in um my life, get out 8 hours of sleep. You're so much better. I wasn't doing that for the longest time. I just started getting good at my sleep schedule.
Yeah.
You get so much more done throughout the day. You feel so much more connected. Just actually, you know what? Altogether, be healthy to your body, because your body is what your tool to get everything done throughout the day. So whether it be stop drinking as much, have a better diet, start exercising, but definitely get those 8 hours of sleep, because you're not going to do any of it if you don't get those 8 hours of sleep.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. And I agree 100%. Sleep is so critical. So many people try to function on not enough sleep, and they're tired and always just have no energy. And so, yeah, great advice. It's something I teach as a coach, to take care of yourself, get sleep, exercise, all those things you just said is super powerful, and I agree 100%. So, anything else? Any? Oh, go ahead.
If you ever need a sub for a coach, man, if you're feeling sick, let them know.
Yeah, fine. Awesome. You should get into it. You should start coaching people. I think you do great. You have a great personality. So,
thank you. I appreciate that, man. Same to you, man. I can definitely see how you got it. Really.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And so, any last words to the listeners?
Yeah, if you enjoyed my conversation at all, please check out me and Zolman's podcast. It's all silly. It's a bunch of nonsense. So it's not really like this, but I do have a midnight snack segment, which I plan on having you on at some point if you'd like to come, which is a lot more serious. It's not as silly, but definitely some silly stuff. I will throw out some would you rathers.
Awesome.
But yeah, I would love to have you on, and we're gonna start some merch soon, but not yet. So not gonna worry about that. But it's Before Bed Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all those. Yeah, same place you can find all of his actually. Yeah.
Yep. And I'll be sure to post a link below this podcast and anywhere else that you see this video, so that you can go and find Justin Pinky Morris and go and connect with him. Listen to him. He's an amazing guy. He's super funny. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. And yeah, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. The pleasure's mine.